Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our 2020 State of the School Address. I'm Caitlin Gottstein, the Director of Alumni Relations for the Freeman School of Business, and we're so thrilled that so many of you are joining us this evening. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone that there will be a recording of this event sent out afterwards, so if you have to hop off early for any reason, we'll get that to you. Additionally, we will be doing a Q&A at the end of this, so feel free to send in any questions you might have to the chat box, and we'll answer as many as we can get to. And with that, I'd now like to introduce our Dean, Ira Solomon, to get things started this evening. So Ira, if you want to hop on. All right, and take it away.
Thank you, Caitlin. Good afternoon. And for those of you on the East Coast, good evening. It would appear that we have a rather large assembly tonight of students, parents of current students, parents of students who are applying for admission to the fall freshman class, alumni, staff, and faculty. While some people are still logging on, the RSVPs were nearly 500 people in total. Thank you all for joining us. Some of you may recall that my academic training is in accounting, and in that world, the key notion is the bottom line. So I'm going to start with what I see as the bottom line for the Freeman School. And I'm most pleased to report in that regard that the state of the Freeman School is excellent. Actually, when one takes into account the numerous challenges posed by COVID-19, I believe that an even more proper grade is excellent plus. Now, the reason for this exceptional performance is the people who make the school run. That is the Freeman School staff and faculty. They have been and are continuing to be outstanding. They simply have delivered exceptional service and instruction. Indeed, this is the resiliency that Freeman and Tulane, and for that matter, all of New Orleans, has become known. Our people have had to adapt to a new working environment. For staff working at home to a great extent or otherwise off campus, and for faculty having to teach from home, at least at times. And they also have had to master teaching in new formats with new teaching technologies, and they've had to do all of that in real time last spring or with a very short lead time, summer and fall of 2020. While I will be providing further commentary during the first part of this webinar, shortly, John Clark, who is Associate Dean for Graduate Programs and Academic Operations, and Mike Hogue, Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education, will be taking the virtual microphone to speak in greater detail about the areas for which they are responsible. So, yes, this has been a very, very, very challenging period. For those of you who missed what I just said, that's 3 varies. And the spring semester of 2021 is expected to be much like the fall semester that we're now concluding. But I am very proud to be able to communicate that the people of the Freeman School have truly risen to the challenges, and it shows. I'm going to now share with you but a few highlights. With respect to enrollments, admissions, student demand for Freeman School services, and some recognitions, I'll offer the following. First off, at the Tulane University level, the admission standards at Tulane University continue to rise. At the undergraduate level, only about 11% of the students who applied for fall 2020 admission to Tulane were admitted. That's an all-time record. And the yield among the admitted students for the 4th year in a row was at a Tulane record, 37%. So many people applied, 11% were admitted, and of the admitted, more than a third enrolled. That's an exceptional performance. The application and admission season for the fall of 21 is now underway. And so far, it looks like interest in Tulane at the undergraduate level is continuing to increase. For example, early decision applications are up 19% over last year's record. It now appears that 50% of the class admitted to the undergraduate program at Tulane for the fall of 21 will be from the early decision pool of applications. That's exceptional at any time, and it's especially exceptional in this pandemic era. In Freeman, there continues to be a growing number of students. And indeed, we're serving a record number of undergraduate students this fall. Let me repeat that. We are serving more students this fall than ever before in the history of the Freeman School. And Freeman undergraduate students are an ever increasing percentage of the Tulane undergraduate student body. In fact, when one combines the undergraduate Freeman School population with our graduate Freeman School population, it is very clear that we are the largest school from the student service standpoint at Tulane University. Using the usual metrics, student quality is up. Actually, it's way up. I continue to tell people, and it's not a joke, that I'm the dean of a business school to which I probably would not be admitted. Freeman students are very active across campus and nationally in terms of competitions and awards. They're too numerous for me to mention here. I would encourage you to take a look at the Freeman School website. I will, however, again, hearkening back to the discipline that I studied in, accounting, tell you that 4 of the last 6 years, Freeman has produced what are known as CELS Award winners on the Uniform CPA exam. These are people who score very, very high, and out of more than 100,000 people, they're in the top 100 or 150. Clearly, something is working very well in that regard. With respect to faculty, Freeman faculty members under the leadership of our new Director of Online Education, Ashley Francis, have made great strides in virtual teaching methods. Instructional designers have been engaged by Freeman and deployed to help faculty reimagine their courses so that they are optimized for the online format. Freeman has also made significant investments in technologies to aid instructors with new teaching methods. This is primarily physical infrastructure, as well as some software that we have acquired. The physical infrastructure, we basically have brought state-of-the-art online teaching technology into 28 of our classrooms, 4 at our Stewart Center CBD and 24, I guess I said 26, it's really 28, 24 uptown. Faculty research output is excellent and is continuing to grow. Here we have something amazing to report. There is a ranking scheme that one of the University of Texas schools puts together, and it looks at publications in lead scholarly journals by business schools. Out of the top 100 business schools last year, Freeman was identified to be the school that had the greatest improvement of any of the top 100 schools. That's quite remarkable. And I can tell you, it's really amazing to see how this has been continuing even in the pandemic era. Faculty awards and acknowledgments in the press are also up. Some of you may know that we have had numerous dissertation awards. You can see details. This is from our newly hired faculty who graduated from other universities, but joined our faculty. You can see this from our website. But also one of the most amazing recognitions we've had is the so-called 40 under 40. There is a publication called Poets and Quants that looks worldwide at the top 40 faculty members in business schools who are under 40 years of age. And we had Assistant Professor of Management Science, Ricky Tan, given that recognition recently. That's an amazing recognition for Ricky, and it brings great recognition to Freeman as well. And it's well-deserved in Ricky's case, for sure. Again, there's a more exhaustive listing of faculty recognitions available on our website, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. We've had some really good recent promotions amongst the tenure system faculty. In finance, we have 2 new associate professors of finance with tenure, Robert Prillmeyer and Nishad Kapadia. And in management science, we have a new associate professor with tenure, Claire Sino. Each of these individuals, in my opinion, is an exemplar in that she or he is excelling in terms of teaching, research, and service. We're looking for people who can complete the triple play, not just somebody who is outstanding in research or is a great teacher. We want people who can do great on all three, and we're seeing faculty deliver there as well. Another initiative that we've had of late is, and this is consistent with Tulane University, is an initiative with respect to diversity and inclusions. We're working to make Freeman a more welcoming school for all people. And in fact, there are 3 initiatives either already underway or about to be. The one that is furthest along is an initiative on inclusivity and diversity that's focused on the art in our building. This was started earlier this fall, and we've got a group of people, I'll tell you more about who they are in a minute, who are looking at how the art in our physical spaces can contribute beauty and serve to welcome all students. The membership of this task force, which just issued an interim report, and I'm hoping we'll finish the report early in the spring, it consists of current students, alumni, local museum directors, excuse me, and other art experts. There's also a graduate student inclusivity and diversity task force that was just announced. It too will have an eclectic membership like the art inclusivity and diversity task force. And then we're also looking at a task force for faculty in this, again, to help to further diversify our faculty, and this will be announced shortly. The Freeman School also has been an exemplar with respect to community engagement of late, and much of this has been focused under the leadership of Professor of Practice Rob Lauka through the LePage Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. In fact, the LePage Center has become a major focal point for Freeman, and for that matter, Tulane University, for community engagement programs, especially those that relate to entrepreneurship, which is a focus of Tulane. I would encourage you to take a look at the recently issued GNO Startup Report, and there's information about a panel discussion that was about that available on our website. We also established a mentorship program for founders of new business enterprises. Our students worked during the summer, especially students who were still seeking to spend time in New Orleans as strategic advisors for startup businesses. And then finally, we were one of the first university business schools to pivot last spring to an online business model competition. It was done very successfully. Other universities pivoted after we did, and in many respects seemed to copy what we did. And I can tell you that we just announced that again, we'll be in an online format for spring of 21. Okay, more to come on all of those topics from Associate Deans Clark and Hogue. But first, as you may know, there's a leadership change coming in the Freeman School. In case you haven't heard, I recently announced that I will not be standing for reappointment for a 3rd term, and thus my service as Freeman School Dean will come to an end at the 10-year point, which is June 30th, 2021. This was a very difficult decision, but it's one that I think was right for me, my family, but also for the Freeman School in Tulane. 10 years is a long time to serve in these kinds of roles, and I think the school is in a great position to be turned over to somebody with new ideas. It has been an immense honor to serve as the dean. But I should also point out that in addition to the excellent faculty and staff who've made this time so dear to me, I'm very grateful to the extraordinary body of alumni, parents, donors, and friends of the Freeman School. I believe that this extremely engaged, invested, and generous community is a spectacular asset that should be treasured, and I believe it's key to an even more exceptional future for Freeman. I thank you and I look forward to continuing to serve as dean until my departure in June of 21. At this time, it's my pleasure to invite Associate Dean Mike Hogue to take the virtual podium to provide commentary on the undergraduate program. Mike?
Thank you, Ira. And Ira, thank you for your leadership. One of the things that's really exciting about the Freeman School is the type of courses we offer students, which are a little different than many other business schools from the standpoint of the fact that we promote something called action learning. So students can actually get their hands dirty. So we have a number of courses that let students explore with the business community different ideas and concepts. So for example, we have a 2-semester course where students who are interested in starting their own businesses can work with experts from the community, whether that be lawyers, business people, nonprofit organizations, whatever a student is interested in doing in terms of starting a business. They can develop a business plan that's vetted through experts. And then in the second semester, they can actually start that business. Another type of course that we have is something called Birkenroad Reports, which some of you I know are familiar with. That program puts students onto teams. They're supervised by a graduate student, and they go out and meet the CEO, CFO, and other top management to gather data to essentially prepare an analyst report. These are all publicly traded firms from Florida to Arkansas. They don't get a lot of coverage by Wall Street, but by no means are they not very successful businesses. So it gives our undergraduate students the opportunity to meet the business leaders of these organizations and then prepare an analyst report. Another program we have that lets students explore investments is something called Darwin Fenner. It's a class that highlights the ability of students to work to assemble a portfolio. They're given $5 million of the university's endowment to manage. They spend the semester doing research to determine how that portfolio should be allocated and then have to justify that allocation to the university's chief investment officer. Another course that we have, which is a little different, is a public service course that lets students go out and evaluate the judges in the local court system. So students are sent to courtrooms, they're trained, and they evaluate the judges and the staff in the courtrooms in terms of efficiency and transparency to the community, and then prepare a report as well. I'm not sure the judges like it because they actually get a grade, A through F. So anyway, that gives students, especially business students, the ability to understand the significance of the American legal system and how it operates. Another sort of trend in business education, and certainly something that's a trend at Tulane, is we've seen many of our undergraduate students express an interest in business analytics. And so we've developed a series of new courses to help students address that need, but also students are taking courses in mathematics and computer science that probably 5 or 10 years ago they weren't taking. So we see many more business students looking and exploring the area of business analytics. In addition to that, we've also focused from another student perspective on non-business students. The business school for a number of years has had a minor for non-business students that is an intensive program that was offered in the summer, and we're going to continue that. But we've also developed a new business minor that would be implemented during the school year that would allow students who have an interest in business, but perhaps not majoring in business, to explore in a very broad way the different aspects of business. Another issue with our undergraduate students that I frequently get questions about is our placement data. And so if you look at the class of 2019, about this time a year ago, about 94% of those students were placed in positions. This year for the class of 2020, primarily due to COVID and some reporting needs, we have about an 82.3 placement rate. However, what's interesting is the mean salary went from $57,844 in 2019 to $63,894 today. We're working diligently to make sure every student in the graduating class of 2020 gets placed. And I have no doubt that we'll be able to achieve that goal. In looking at student and faculty interaction, I suppose, with COVID-19, sometimes I'm asked what we learned from that. And the university did a series of surveys about what students were interested in terms of the way classes are designed. And one of the things that we learned both from faculty and students is that they would prefer to have a choice in terms of fully in-person classes and fully online classes. So we listened to the students and then developed a series of courses that allow students to pick which one they would prefer to take for the spring semester. In addition to that, and I think my colleague John Clark will talk more about this, in order to support that online learning, as Dean Solomon mentioned, the school has made a significant investment in technology in our classrooms. And so that helps to enhance the online experience. We've also provided a great deal of training and support for those faculty who have been teaching online to make sure that their courses are delivered in a manner that makes them accessible and engaging for students. So I think there are a number of very exciting things going on at the undergraduate level, and I'm pleased to be able to share those with you. Now what I would like to do is introduce my colleague, John Clark, who is the Dean of the graduate program. John?
Thanks, Mike. It's really great to be here, and a big thank you to all of you for being on the call tonight. As you know, it's not business as usual in the world today, but as you've heard from Ira and Mike, it's business as usual in the Freeman School in terms of us fulfilling our teaching, research, and outreach missions. We quickly adjusted to the challenges brought on by the pandemic this past spring and continue to move aggressively forward on all fronts. As Mike mentioned, to address the challenges in the teaching arena, we made major investments in our teaching technologies, upgrading what we thought were already state-of-the-art classrooms, but they had to be upgraded to meet the new demands of mixed modal teaching. We also made significant investments in the resources available to support our faculty. Teaching in person is something that we understand well, and we've been doing it here in the Freeman School for more than 106 years. I've seen online teaching come a long way in the last 15 years, as has the technologies that support it. But teaching in person and online at the same time is an additional challenge that was brought on by this global pandemic. As Dean Solomon mentioned, it's important to recognize the contributions of our entire Freeman community as we worked to meet these challenges. And our success is based on how our faculty, our staff, and our students have responded to these challenges and really stepped up to make things happen. Now, beyond keeping it business as normal in Freeman, we've also been busy expanding and growing, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples coming from the graduate space. This spring, we're launching our first ever fully online degree program. It's a Master of Management with a specialization in entrepreneurial hospitality. And this one-year program is focused on the customer-centric strategies that we see in parts of the hospitality industry that can be applied across a broad range of industries, both product and service-based. The pandemic is forcing many people in different industries, including hospitality, to innovate and think about how they can deliver customer experiences that create market differentiation and can lead to a competitive advantage. We're very excited to launch this program, especially now, given the additional disruptions that are occurring in many industries. We're continuing to see growth in our combined degrees, and last year we launched a unique program with the School of Architecture. It's a Master of Sustainable Real Estate Development and an MBA degree combined. We're not aware of any such program anywhere in the world, and we're very excited to attract our first cohorts of students first cohort of students, to that program this year. Our MD MBA program, which is offered in partnership with the School of Medicine at Tulane, is now attracting 10% of the incoming medical school class, which is very encouraging. As far as I know, it's the only operational 4-year MD MBA program in the country. That's one example of some of the combined programs that we already have and one that we've recently launched, but we're continuing to expand our partnerships with other colleges on the Tulane campus. In our 1-year Masters of Management in Energy, the program is taking on some new directions and launching new classes in renewable energy. Our global environmental challenges are here to stay, and these offerings have been very well received by current students and prospective students. Ira mentioned our physical facilities. A few years ago, we opened a facility downtown New Orleans called Stewart Center CBD. Initially, this was used for executive education programming and for our EMBA students. But today, we're using it as regular classrooms for several of our full-time master's degree programs. And these additional classroom spaces have been critical to us given the restrictions placed on us through COVID-19. One of the programs that moved to this downtown location to take advantage of these classrooms is the Masters of Business Analytics program. We launched this program a few years ago, and we've had 2 small classes of around 20 students graduate from it. But this year, we will attract more than 100 students to the program. We had a very large class join in fall, both here in New Orleans and also in China. And when we add the new students who will be starting this spring, we're going to get into triple digits. So very large growth in this area. We're continuing to make investments in this program, both from a faculty and a curriculum perspective. But it is important to note that this program, the courses in this program are taught not exclusively by management science faculty, but by faculty coming from all areas of the Freeman School. So this means that we're also developing business analytics content in courses and programs in finance, accounting, marketing, and management, as well as, of course, in management science. Now, I mentioned students starting here in New Orleans and in China. In order to serve students who could not travel to the US due to the pandemic, the Freeman School launched a partnership with one of the highest ranking universities in China, Peking University. Through this partnership, our graduate students were able to start their degrees by taking Tulane classes at a Peking University facility in Beijing. Peking University faculty taught Tulane classes in person, and Tulane faculty taught some other courses online. Now, this unique offering attracted 110 new students this past fall. They're wrapping up with their final exams right now. And we already have more than 100 students signed up to take advantage of this offering at Peking in spring. Now, most of these students still plan to complete their studies in New Orleans, but this innovative program enables students to be able to start their degrees on time rather than delaying them due to the pandemic. So these are a few examples, just a few, of the exciting things that are currently happening in the Freeman School. And in these examples and in everything that we do in the Freeman School, your engagement and support is critical to what we do. So I thank you for all of your assistance. Time, of course, is one of your most precious resources, and I greatly appreciate your sharing this time with us this evening. So with that, we're going to move now to the Q&A portion of the evening, and I will hand back over to Caitlin.
Great, thanks, John. And I know Mike and Ira are going to pop back on as well. As a reminder, you can submit any questions you have in the chat box, but we've already had several come through, so we'll go ahead and get started with those. I think the first one we'll do is, what lessons have you learned from the pandemic?
I think I'm going to take a stab at this first, but then I'll be happy to toss it to Professors Clark and Hogue as well. The lessons are manyfold. Some of them are about life, some of them are about education, and some of them are in particular about business school education. One of the lessons that I learned is that life and everything that is part of it is fragile and interdependent. Second, It's not just business that is global. Virtually all aspects of life are global. And, you know, if someone sneezes somewhere in Asia, we can catch cold here in the US. Thirdly, slightly different perspective, the ability to adapt is an underappreciated key to success. Business schools that didn't adapt to the extent that we did have not had nearly the same kinds of outcomes that we've been able to share with you. And then fourthly, the digitization page has been turned and there's no turning back. Look at what happened Black Friday as an example in terms of retail sales. It was all about sales online and much less about sales with people physically in stores. There are huge implications for business and business education in the future. John, Mike, what would you guys like to add to that?
Well, I would personally, something that was an important learning for me was that kind of approach the pandemic as if it was a hurricane. And, you know, perhaps that's a cultural norm from living in the Gulf South, is that you figure, well, you're just going to hunker down and you're going to, you know, collect some supplies and you'll ride it out. But what I quickly realized that was putting me and those around me in survival mode. At best, we were going to suffice. And what we really needed to do was recognize that we had to thrive in this environment. These changes in some ways were going to be permanent. And so I think with any challenge that one faces, it's really important to have that long view, to step back and to think strategically about how can you adapt, how can you modify your behaviors, your relationships, your offerings in order to succeed in what is emerging as a new environment. And as Ira mentioned, the environment's changing, but it's not changing in a temporary fashion. There are many changes occurring today that are in fact permanent. So I think it's served as a good reminder that should be our MO permanently.
I think what I learned sort of echoes what Ira and John said. Part of it's flexibility and adaptability, but something I guess that was important to me, I learned from our students, faculty and staff, which was human beings can be extraordinarily kind and caring to one another. And I think as the pandemic brought about a lot of things that people obviously disliked, I mean, it was really refreshing to see how people pulled together, worked together, cared for one another. I think that's a Freeman and Tulane tradition, and it was reaffirmed by the pandemic for me.
Okay, great. We'll move to the next one. What does the future look like for university business schools?
All right, I'll go first on this one, and then after this, somebody else can go first. You know, what I would say is there's a shakeout coming. Business as usual is no longer going to be business as usual for much longer. University business school enrollments, particularly at the undergraduate level, they're holding up reasonably well, but university enrollments are not holding up nearly as well. I think I read a statistic in an article recently that said that there's 16% fewer undergraduates studying in the United States in undergraduate programs this fall versus the previous fall. We're not seeing that, and I have some hypotheses as to why. But I think not all business school approaches, not all business school models, not all business school faculties will continue to thrive in the future. And some will fail, some will merge, and some will simply disappear. Now, a corollary to all of this is that online education is here to stay. It's going to grow in importance, and there will be many different versions of it. Third observation is that in-person undergraduate education will continue, although here again, some different models are likely to emerge. And I think there's going to have to be a change in emphasis with respect to curriculum design and in particular, individual learning objectives as set forth in specific courses. There's going to have to be a de-emphasis on fact-based knowledge learning objectives with a greater emphasis on learning objectives that relate to skills and values. Lastly, for me, graduate education. Here's where we're going to see the biggest changes. I think we're going to see much more just-in-time education. I think we're going to see much more education that is happening when people need it in the form they need it. Some of that will be online, of course, but some of it may come in the form of certificates, some of which may be stackable, and after a certain number of certificates are earned, it could be rolled up into degrees or parts of degrees. But we're going to see a lot of variation here, I think. And again, more of an emphasis on what you need to know, when you need to know it. And a lot of that will be delivered online. Some of these changes that I've talked about were already underway, but they've been put on warp speed by the pandemic. Mike, John, your thoughts?
I didn't have anything to add to the answer.
I didn't either.
Wow, I must have done okay.
I did.
All right, great.
All right. Well, we'll move into a question about the Career Management Center at Freeman. What role can alums and parents play with the CMC to help students get jobs?
I think one of the things that parents and alums can do is to interact with the CMC. And Dale Clemforth, who's the executive director. He's very interested in hearing from parents and alumni and has arranged a number of sessions, obviously Zoom sessions these days, with parents, alums, and students to network, to help explore careers, just to name a couple of things. So in my mind, the best thing to do is to reach out to the Career Management Center. We would sincerely appreciate anyone that would like to do that to help our students gain some insight into networking as well as the kinds of careers that they might embark upon.
And I would add to Mike's request too, is that parents and others who might be here this evening should encourage students to engage with our CMC, engaging early and engaging often. CMC offers great services to students, but students often think about, what I'm going to do after the program, that'll be something they think about at the end of the program. But in fact, it's something you need to start thinking about before you even start the program. So encouraging folks in the Freeman School that you might be connected to engage with these resources is critical. Students who engage actively with the CMC often find opportunities that they weren't even considering when they were starting out. So it's really important to engage with these folks, as I say, and to do it soon. Mike shared some data earlier on about placement. We're seeing very similar things to what Mike shared in the graduate space in terms of placement being a little down this year. But similar to undergrad, we're seeing that the mean salaries of students are actually higher this year, even though placement is down 10 to 20%.
Ira, anything to add?
Nope, I think they did great. Next question.
All right. What is the value of an undergraduate studying abroad in our global economy?
I think the study abroad program at the business school allows students to understand the connections that exist in our global environment and international business. So I think if a student wants to learn more about a different culture, not everyone thinks the way Americans might perceive a particular issue, not that Americans are a monolithic group of people, but at the same time, what a student can learn going abroad, they can never learn actually in a classroom. They have to actually experience a different culture, a different way of thinking, And it also helps build friendships, possible career opportunities. So in my mind, going abroad is one of the most valuable experiences an undergraduate can have in terms of learning about different cultures and people.
John, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, from a graduate perspective, this global perspective is also very important. Business, as Dean Solomon mentioned earlier, is truly global today. It doesn't matter what role you're filling. It doesn't matter what kind of company you're joining. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You're going to be part of this global economy. So in order to succeed in these different environments and these different jobs, it's really important to have this global perspective. And for graduate students too, as Mike was suggesting for undergrads, finding a way to get a global perspective whilst you're here at the Freeman School, which might be through an international program, or it might be through spending time looking at international issues in courses, or mixing and mingling with our international students is a very important thing to pursue.
Over the last few years, the Freeman School has made it an explicit goal to have the opportunity for every one of our students to have some meaningful study abroad experience. That might be a 2-week class in Bogota, Colombia, or it might be a semester in Barcelona, Spain, or even a year in Sydney, Australia. There's all kinds of possibilities. We have grown in the business school, the number of opportunities and these places, the interesting places where students could study. Now, my own view of this is people think, oh, okay, I'm going to go study abroad and I'm going to learn a lot about the country that I study in. And you will. But the other thing that you learn is you learn a lot about your country and you. And that's something I think people don't really appreciate. It's kind of like the perspective of looking at the globe, the Earth, if you will, from outer space. It's a very different perspective than when you're sitting on the Earth or standing on the Earth in New Orleans, for example. And that's vitally important to get an opportunity to see what you're really about, what your country is about, how it's the same, how it differs from other places. And, you know, not a small part of this, actually a significant part, is that students get taken out of their comfort zone. And learning is magnified when you're out of your comfort zone. So it's a great learning experience, some of what is anticipated, but some of what is not anticipated.
All right, great. Circling back to undergraduate experience, what can an undergraduate student, or when can an undergraduate student see a career advisor, and at what point in their undergraduate experience is a student encouraged to obtain an internship?
So an undergraduate student can see a career advisor beginning their freshman year. There's no restriction, but we don't always leave things to chance. So certainly by the sophomore year, they're going to be encouraged because they have to take a course in career development. And so that course will force them to interact with the Career Center, for want of a better term. But all kidding aside, I think one of the things that we look at is each student develops differently. And so for some students at the end of their freshman year, perhaps an internship would be appropriate. But certainly for most students by the end of their sophomore year, they should begin to think about getting an internship for the summer following their sophomore year. We offer an enormous amount of resources and help for students to obtain an internship. And we look at those internships all across the country, in fact, across the globe. So if students want an internship, they're definitely the people in the Career Management Center that are there to help them. So I think what John mentioned earlier, the more often the students interact with the Career Center, the better their employment experience for internships and permanent placements will be.
Okay, great. Are undergraduate students encouraged to take non-business classes beyond the Newcomen tooling core classes?
The short answer is absolutely yes. So all of our majors have a set of recommended courses that students can take outside of the business school that will help broaden their experience, and also, I think, enrich their intellectual time at the academy. So absolutely. I would say the most popular courses probably by area outside of business are mathematics, economics, political science. But I will tell you a funny story. We had a student, which would be unusual for Tulane, that liked country music, which was sort of interesting. But he ended up taking a number of music courses outside of the business school. I think his dad was a judge, so this had something to do with it. But he ended up applying to law school and going to Vanderbilt in Nashville to law school. And now he recently graduated last year and has taken a position with an entertainment law firm. So I think taking courses outside of the business school can lead to interesting career choices.
One of the probably unique is a fair descriptor here. One of the unique aspects of undergraduate education at Tulane is the ability of students to study wherever they want, whenever they want. There are fewer frictions at Tulane in that regard than any other university that I know of, at least university that has our type of profile. So we see at the end of the day, students, large numbers of students taking classes across campus, coming up with interesting combinations of programs of study. And many of them will have double majors, and a large number earn multiple degrees. Mike, do you know the statistics on the number of students that earn multiple degrees at Tulane?
About 60%.
Yeah. Let's repeat that. 60%. That's amazing. And I'm not aware of any other university that has that kind of an opportunity that is pursued to the extent that it is. Some universities will say, come to us and you can decide what works for you and major wherever you want and as many programs as you want. But the reality is very different. At Tulane, students can actually do that, and they do that.
All right, great. Well, we are starting to get close to the end of our time. I think we can do one more. This is about an undergraduate experience question also. So what resources are available to undergrad students that face academic difficulty while at Tulane?
There are a number of resources. And I'm pleased to say I went to Tulane to college 100 years ago, and they're so much better. I would have done much better at Tulane if I had had these resources. But one of the things that's available are for students, for example, that may have difficulty managing their time and scheduling, their life coaches. Certainly as students, and everyone does this occasionally in life, they might have a personal issue or bump in the road. So there are full-time psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers. But beyond that, I think one of the things that's really interesting about Tulane is the Academic Enrichment Center from the viewpoint of providing tutors to students, those tutors one-on-one basis if a student is having trouble in a course. Also, there are graduate students that go to classes. They sit in the class and then they reteach that class in the evening. So students can sit through the faculty version of a course or the course that's then retaught at night and ask questions. So there are a whole array of resources that students have, but I will say the single best resource, and I always encourage students to do this, is to work up the courage to knock on the door of the faculty member's office, or today I guess you would ask for a Zoom meeting, but nonetheless, if you talk to the faculty members in the Freeman School, I've never met a faculty member that isn't willing to sit down with a student one-on-one and go over any questions that they have.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. And if talking about what's going on in an instructor's class isn't sufficient to get them interested, ask them about their research. I've never seen a faculty member at Tulane or anywhere else that doesn't get excited about the opportunity to tell a student about the interesting knowledge frontiers that they're expanding. So I would strongly encourage that. And you know, Mike Hogue himself, I don't mean to embarrass you by this, Mike, but I could tell the people here that have joined the webinar that as I would travel around, of course, in the pre-pandemic era, I would travel around, people would tell me story after story about faculty at Tulane who went the extra mile to keep them as a functional student in their class and more generally at Tulane. And oftentimes Mike Hogue's name would come up as someone who really helped somebody find their way through a class and their undergraduate education. And I'm happy to say, while Mike excels at that and has been at it for a long time, there are many people at Freeman, and for that matter, across Tulane University, who adopt the same approach. And so there's a lot of help around formal and informal, and students just simply need to ask. John, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you guys covered it.
All right. Very good.
All right. Well, John and Mike and Ira, thank you all for being here this evening and for your time. Before I turn it over to Ira, I know there were a few questions we didn't get to in the chat. John was typing away, answering some of them. Thank you, John. So if we didn't answer your question, feel free to reach out. And if one of us can't answer it, we will put you in touch with the right person who can. Again, we'll be sending out a recording of this event later in the week. And I'll turn over to Ira now for some closing remarks.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin. And Mike and John, thanks for carving time out for this evening. And John, you were doing double duty, speaking and responding in the chat. And then there were a couple of times when I thought about responding as well, because there's some good questions there. Our apologies for not being able to get to all of them, but you do have email addresses. And again, the faculty and staff at Tulane, and in particular in the Freeman School, will engage and do what they can to answer your question. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I hope you found the investment of your time to be beneficial, worthwhile, and I hope you found the webinar to be informative. There's so many exciting things going on at Freeman and Tulane, and so many people deserve credit for that. I mentioned the Freeman School faculty and staff. I would be remiss if I didn't mention also the Tulane University most senior leadership, who were able to craft a very important array of policies and procedures that allowed us to reopen in person this fall. You can sort universities out by whether they were able to reopen and to do so largely safely. And that doesn't mean nobody got COVID, but it means largely safely. And those that didn't. You can see huge differences in student satisfaction, enrollments, et cetera. The other side of the coin is the university came through financially rather well. Now that's in the context of the pandemic. So in any event, things are exciting. I hope some of that excitement that we feel came through in this webinar format. These are uncertain times, as we've mentioned at several points this evening. I am confident in one thing, however. The fortitude and excellence of the Freeman School and the Tulane community will carry the school through to even greater heights. Thank you all for joining us once again. Caitlin, John, Mike, thank you. I hope everybody has a happy, safe, and healthy holiday season, themselves and their family. Bye.